Here's what's next on the Nice Guys on Business.
As a team, as an organization, how does the work get done? Some work probably needs to be synchronous. You need to have discussions. You need to have the occasional meeting where people get together and talk about stuff. You need to, if I'm on Slack and I send out a question, it would be nice if somebody would answer me while I'm still awake. Right. So there is some degree of synchronous work that makes sense. Problem is, most people don't manage that intentionally. Right. And a lot of organizations still confuse activity with productivity.
I told Bill that if they move my desk one more time, then I'm quitting. I'm going to quit. They moved my desk 4 times already this year. I used to be over by the window, and I could see the squirrels, and they were merry, but then they switched from the swing line to the Boston stapler. But I kept my swing line stapler because it didn't bind up as much, and I kept the staples for the swing line stapler. And it's not okay because if they take my stapler, then I'll set the building on fire, and I might even start listening to the Nice Guys on Business podcast. That'll teach them. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by TurnKey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, Nice Guy community, working remotely or trying to figure out the ins and the outs of doing it right? Well, check out today's Nice Guys episode and our guest, Wayne Turmel, leadership and communication expert for 30 plus years and called by Marshall Goldsmith as one of the most unique voices in leadership today, podcast host of Long Distance Worklife and speaker. Wayne, welcome to the Nice Guys.
Thank you, Doug. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we had Marshall on. This is going back probably about 7 or 8 months ago, maybe a little bit longer ago. And, there are a number of things that he talks about. And one of the things that obviously he specializes in and you do as well is in the leadership side and communication. And he's an executive coach and all of that. But focusing on you for the sake of this interview and for the subject matter too, man, has the world been completely turned upside down since COVID with this remote workspace? It's now just the norm, it seems like, and no longer the outlier.
Yeah, I mean, remote work is one of those things that has always kind of existed. I mean, Genghis Khan ruled half the world and never held a WebEx meeting. It can be done.
It can be done.
Right? Julius Caesar was great out in the field. It's when he came back to the office, things kind of went sideways for him. So it's always existed, and it was existing before COVID. But what COVID did, just to keep the Julius Caesar metaphor running, is it pushed us over the Rubicon, and there was kind of no going back. And it's not that people aren't going back to the office, because an awful lot of them are, but we've now experienced it. And it's a part, even if you do not have a quote unquote fully remote team, odds are you've reached some kind of hybrid agreement where some people are in the office and some people aren't. And, you got to go in a couple of days a week. But if you have one member of your team that isn't where you are, you have a remote team. Mm-hmm. And we need to get our mitts around that in order to do the good work.
What do you think one of the biggest challenges? I mean, I can come up with a million in my brain, but this is the thing that you specialize in. What's one of the biggest challenges when it comes to having a remote workforce from your perspective?
The biggest challenge is kind of getting over the fact that you're remote. It's really easy to focus on that and not do some of the things, team building and communication and things that you would normally do. Mm-hmm. In our book, the subtitle is Revised Rules for Remarkable Remote and Hybrid Leadership. And rule number 1 is think leadership first, location second. Mm. Right? As leaders, if we do the stuff that we know leaders need to do, you'll probably overcome the distance. If you're a terrible leader, odds are it will make it worse. I'll give you my favorite bad example. My wife was once fired by instant messenger.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
it did the job. I mean, she was unemployed at the end of the conversation, to be sure. But, what you had was a weaselly owner who didn't want the confrontation and frankly, in a perfect world, wouldn't have had employees at all. And so this enabled his horrible anti-human behavior.
Yeah, yeah. I find as a guy that owns a company that has 15 team members and 14 and plus me 15, we all work remotely. Some of them I've never even met, and there's no plan on ever meeting them. I find that, and not that that's in a bad way. I mean, some are overseas, and just from an affordability perspective and turnover perspective, sometimes it's challenging to meet everybody that's on your team. But what I find is the things in talking to other people that have remote workforces or a team that is not local to them in an office building, those things that are challenging to them are amplified x-fold when you have a remote workforce. You're a bad leader as a in person. You're a horrible leader when it comes to remote because you're lazy or you don't have your own set of disciplinary rules that you follow. When it comes to having a workforce, or if you're a team member on that, if you're not disciplined, you're extra not disciplined when you have a workforce that's remote. How do you deal with that?
Well, and let me add more
Yeah,
to it
yeah.
because there's discipline, but there's also micromanagement. If you're not comfortable telling people what to do and letting them do it and then helping them be accountable for that, that's only going to get worse. And, you could tell bad leaders at the beginning of COVID because the micromanagement was just soul crushing. Let's put trackers on their keyboards so we know
Oh my
where they're
gosh.
going. And,
Yeah.
it was just insane. And I'm sorry, you asked me a perfectly valid question and I went off a cliff.
No, no, that's okay. I find that I think I would love your comments just about the amplification of those
Yeah,
bad habits or good habits for that matter. Somebody that
right.
is really very friendly and very supportive in a remote work environment as a leader would tend to lead in the direction of I really want to help. Like if Wayne, you were on my team, and
Yeah.
you go ahead.
I think that's exactly right. Your instincts are we need to talk together as a team. Now, sometimes, it can go a little bit crazy. A lot of us went through Zoom fatigue for a while because suddenly we were on meetings all the time, which is a well-intentioned method of recreating the office environment, right?
But
The intentions are
totally
good.
inefficient though. You're
It's
over
totally
meeting.
inefficient, but so are most meetings,
Right, right.
right?
We eliminate all but one meeting a week. We have one meeting a week. It runs about 30 minutes and it's the easiest meeting in the world. We allow our team to bring drinks to the meeting if they
Right.
choose
Well,
to.
and it's not like there aren't plenty of ways to communicate
Right,
in the meantime, right?
right.
To really make, if you're remote first, it's fairly easy because everybody is remote and everybody's working with the same set of rules. Where it gets funky is when you're in a hybrid environment, particularly where you've got some people that are always in the office and some people who never are.
Hmm.
And that can get really funky about how much communication is enough. Are people getting equal or equitable amounts of information? Does the home team know everything and the people out in the provinces know absolutely nothing? So, and again, if you stop and think, which is the whole purpose of the book, if you stop and think, gee, should I give this person feedback? Well, the answer is yes, you should give them feedback. But it's easier when you're in the office, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're walking on your way to the coffee machine, and my brain goes, aha, that's Doug, and I should tell him X. Whereas if you're working remotely and I have to stop and I have to get on Teams or Slack and I have to type something out, I'm less likely to give you that feedback in a timely manner.
Hmm. Hmm.
I know that I got to give you feedback. I know that it should be the right mix of positive and corrective feedback. It's not that I can't do it. It's that I need to be more aware and intentional about doing it. And that's the fundamental difference. Is if you stop and think, odds are you'll do the right thing. The problem is we don't often get the chance to stop and think.
Well, a couple things that come to mind as you say that, we're not in a one size fits all remote environment. So very similar to the workplace, you can't put everybody into a box and say, okay, they work remote. So this is, it's still a personality game. If Doug is a guy that needs a little bit more hand holding in person, probably needs a little bit more hand holding remotely as well.
Let me give you a very simple example.
Okay.
I am a grown man. I have run my own company. I am a perfectly competent remote worker. I live in Las Vegas. Kevin Eikenberry, my co-author, my boss, lives in Indianapolis, so we're on different time zones. So every morning, about 6:30 or so, when I begin my day, I send him a note and say, hey, boss, how's it going? I'm here. Anything going on? I don't need to check in with him. He does not require me to check in. But I send him that little note. He sends back, hey, how's your day? Or how was last night? Or, oh, I need to ask you something. And it's just a little bit of connection that makes me feel connected. There are team members he doesn't do that with. I need just enough connection to know that I'm not alone.
Well, but so you're the outlier though, not in that you need the connection, but the fact that you understand that you need the connection. Some people will put that in terms of my boss doesn't pay attention to me if you don't get that touch point, rather than you taking the bull by the horns and saying, this is partly my responsibility. I'm a remote worker. I've got to do that. And that's got to be a challenge for people when you go into organizations and see it, to say, speak up for yourself and what you need. Is that right?
We call that the Spider-Man paradox. And the
Spidey senses got him going?
No, the Spider-Man paradox, everybody has seen, because they keep doing the origin story every movie. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. As a remote worker, you have unprecedented power over your schedule. I mean, there are limits.
Yeah,
but
I agree with you.
Generally speaking,
right.
You have a flexibility that you don't have when you're in the office. You have time with your family you don't have when you're commuting. There is great power to that. And as a remote employee, you have a responsibility. And the problem for a lot of people is that for the last 120 years, we have been domesticated and taught that work is you go to work and you get managed and you go home. And a lot of people just have had bred out of them the entrepreneurial spirit and the feeling of this is what it takes to be a good employee. We know that good employees are proactive. We know that they are engaged and that they care and they do all that. And we need to encourage that, right? And as an employee, you own some of this. There's something, we refer to it in the new book. It's actually a big piece of the long distance teammate that we call ethical visibility, which is you owe it to your teammates and to your boss to be visible. You need to speak up on meetings. You need to at least occasionally show your smiling face on the webcam. You need to raise a hand to volunteer for stuff. You need to speak up when there's a problem. And you need to do it in a way that's not look at me.
Yeah.
I'm an attention-starved weasel. That's where the ethical part comes in. But you need to be visible because it is perfectly natural, not ideal, but natural for managers to fall prey to proximity bias. We all do it. It's a perfectly natural behavior. If I have a question, I'm going to turn to the person who's literally right there.
Or if you have a decision that you need to make or an assignment that you need to give, it's the person that probably gives you the most face time and the most attention that there's one that's going to get, and the most, because they appear to be the most competent, I would think, of all.
Well, they appear to be the most competent. They're certainly the most convenient, right? If they need coaching, I'm right here with them.
Right.
And it means, one of the most toxic things in a remote work environment is exclusion. whether it is intentional or unintentional. This feeling of being left out of the discussion, the feeling of not being included in the team, the feeling of not being properly valued. And one, as you said, one manager's, well, I'm just going to leave them to it. They're doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
That person may be going, why doesn't my boss ever talk to me? Right? I only hear from her when I'm in trouble.
I'm curious what your perspective is on this because as a guy that's nearly 60 myself, I look at the environment that I'm in and think I can work independently. Geez, most of my work, my career, I worked independently. I don't need anybody. And then as you get a little bit closer to birth date to today, you get a little bit more needs. How are the generations accepted or rejected the remote workforce?
There's a lot of misconceptions about generations in the workforce. The sense of, those darn kids don't want to come to the office, and well, that's actually not true. The people who want the most time physically together are your newer workers. And that's for a couple of reasons. Number one is they're new. Mm-hmm. They need access to information. They need mentoring. You're also, frankly, if you're hiring kids straight out of school, you've taken people away from their social networks. You've taken people maybe away from home for the first time. There is a social need that gets met when you work together. So when you're new and young in the workplace, there are all kinds of valid reasons that people want to be highly social. When you reach a point in your career where I know what I'm doing, I don't need to be supervised. By the way, I have a wife and kid I'd like to see once in a while. Right? All of a sudden, flexibility becomes much more important. And by the time you're a senior director of whatever the heck you're the senior director of, none of your reports live where you do anyway. Right? Because they're scattered all over the country or maybe the world. And so it really doesn't matter where you are physically. And so that's the thing. You've got your very senior people who grew up in an in-office, in-person, very tightly networked environment that think that's the ideal. And you've got the newbies who maybe would like to work from home, but they haven't quite developed the skills. They don't do the job well enough yet. They need the coaching and the mentoring. Maybe they need to be physically in the office more than other people.
The book is called The Long Distance Leader, Revised Rules for Remarkable Remote and Hybrid Leadership. Wayne had written the book along with Kevin. Is it Eichenberry?
Kevin Eichenberry, yeah.
And Kevin. And I also know that you have a podcast too, but we're going to talk about the podcast in a second. I want to remind our Nice Guy community, if you want to check out the book, I recommend that you head over to the show notes. There's a link that will take you directly to Amazon. If you're listening to this mid-September, it is in pre-release. You can certainly buy a copy of the book. If it's after mid-September of 2024, feel free just to click the link and buy the book. I'm curious what your perspective is on this. I don't even know that I have an answer to this because you don't know what you don't know, but somehow I figure that you're going to know the answer to this question.
At least act like I do, which is sometimes the same
you're the
thing.
expert. Look, that's why I bring people on the show. You can pretend it. They already know I'm stupid. you can pretend like you know what you're talking about. What is still a challenge in the workspace as it relates to being a remote worker that is still a work in progress? There's probably a bunch of stuff, but what still need to be worked on?
The short answer is performance management. If people understand what they are expected to do, and there are metrics, KPIs, ways of measuring that you have as a leader have access to, you can manage your people, right? The challenge is that a lot of metrics and KPIs are built for the in-office environment. For example, are you logged on by 9 and do you stay logged on until 4:30 or 5 o'clock? Why?
That to me just seems so counter remote or distant workforce. It just doesn't see, why would I be logged in? I can work at 2 a.m. I can't work in,
Right. But
if
here's the thing. As a team, as an organization, how does the work get done? Some work probably needs to be synchronous. You need to have discussions. You need to have the occasional meeting where people get together and talk about stuff. You need to, if I'm on Slack and I send out a question, it would be nice if somebody would answer me while I'm still awake. Right. So there is some degree of synchronous work that makes sense. Problem is, most people don't manage that intentionally. Right. And a lot of organizations still confuse activity with productivity.
Yeah.
And so, well, if they're not on at 9 o'clock, they might be at Target. Well, you and I can sit here and go, who cares if they're at Target as long as that project gets finished.
Right.
But that's not the way we're programmed. Now, we also know that there are people who show up at 9 and don't leave till 5 who don't do a darn thing.
Right.
But by golly, they're there, so they must be good.
Yeah, that's a really hard KPI to take seriously. If you laid out perfectly both scenarios, somebody that's at Target but gets their project done, and somebody that's sitting 9 to 5 at their desk but doesn't get the project done. Well, they were sitting there at their desk.
First of all, people always manage to the exception. I mean, that's kind of, if you see a stupid rule somewhere, that somebody did something really dumb and they had to put a rule in place. Like during COVID, we heard somebody had an entirely different job that they were working while they're supposed to be working for us. Well, yeah, they probably did. Guess what? There are lazy, slimy, terrible humans out there.
Amazing. You also have a podcast, and the podcast is called, fill in the blank here,
The Long Distance Worklife, and it is essentially a guide to people who work remotely or hybrid. Every other episode is myself and my co-host producer Marissa, and the next episode is an interview, very much like we're having now, with somebody who knows about this stuff.
Now, you gave me a pretty interesting stat, whether you realized it or not, before I hit record, and you shared with me that 6 months after podcast started being a thing, you were in the podcasting space. So I go back to this year we'll be celebrating our 10th year as a podcaster. We're granddaddies. That means you're a ancient as it relates to the podcast space.
I am a stone cold relic.
That's what I meant.
I had a show called the Cranky Middle Manager Show that was, at the time, and this is a pretty short list to be on, one of the top management HR podcasts in the world. And after 400 and something episodes, I just couldn't do it anymore. And now the world has changed and podcasts are a thing, and here we are, man.
Well, what's nice about it is you do have a chance. And not only I've listened to a couple of the episodes with you and your co-host Marissa on, and then I listened to a couple of episodes with you and guests. And for those of you in our Nice Guy community, my interview skills pale in comparison to Wayne. He asks a lot of the fun questions, a lot of good questions, great conversation as he's having with his guests. It comes across as though he's been in the podcasting space for 15 or 20 years. So you'll enjoy his podcast too. We'll make sure we put a link in the show notes for that as well.
It's very kind, man. I mean, listen, you're doing a good job here and good work, and you can't have enough nice guys in your community.
I feel the same, Wayne. Thank you for sharing that. So talk to me with your business hat on for a second, not about your subject matter necessarily, but just somebody that works within a company and an organization. You said you had a boss. His name is Kevin. Coincidentally, I think Marissa might have the same last name, so I don't know if that's his wife or a sister or
that's his daughter-in-law. And she started working there before she became his daughter-in-law. But yes.
That's very good. So you have experience as a remote worker as well. What are some of the things that you're still dealing with as a remote worker? Or maybe there are no things that you're still working on, but
You
you
know
like to
what?
fine tune.
It's the same thing I think that we deal with every day. Some days I'm just not feeling it.
Hmm.
And not any great coincidence, the older I get, the more days I have when I'm just not feeling it.
I'm with you, man. When do we get to
Um,
retire? I'm ready.
well, I could retire tomorrow if I die Tuesday. Uh, uh, the I think for me, and that's all I can talk to on this one, my self-talk is not always the best. I would immediately fire any manager who spoke to somebody the way I speak to myself.
Yeah. 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 I can.
And when I'm stuck, when my wheels are spinning, that can become a lot. And I occasionally need assistance getting unstuck.
Yeah, that's really that's noble for you to share that. That's I know that's not an easy thing to share. It's an easy thing to hear because we're like, hey, look, people get stuck, but it's challenging to admit oftentimes. I'm a horrible micromanager oftentimes. When I give a task, I have to remind myself, almost like get my hands away from the keyboard. Go sit down and watch Netflix. I don't care what you do, but don't get on the computer and tell somebody how you just assigned the project to them. And now you're telling them how to do the project after you've already instructed them. Don't do that.
Now,
Really
this is
hard for
part
me.
of, though, what you said before about being proactive and owning it, is I have a relationship with Kevin where I can go, I need your help. I
Yeah.
got 5 things on my plate. I'm not getting any of them done. I'm spinning my wheels here. What's most important? And he'll tell me, and I go, okay, here's where I'm stuck.
Hmm.
He foolishly has incredible faith in my ability to do whatever it is I'm doing, and left to his own devices would ask me once a week when we have our one-on-one, and that would be the end of the check-in.
Right.
It's up to me to say, hey, I need a moment.
What's just curious because I don't know your full position with Kevin and
Yeah.
what you do exactly at the organization, but do you play many roles? Sales,
Well,
delivery, deliver it
newsflash,
all?
nobody really
Nobody
does.
knows. Well, that's the best position to have. That way you can't be
It ain't
accountable to
bad.
anything.
It ain't. I guess you would think of it as the product manager for the remote and evolving workplace
Hmm.
stuff. Uh, Writing blogs, doing interviews, that kind of thing, plus teaching, plus sales, plus whatever else needs to be done. One of the things that I have learned is I am a really lousy number one. I am a pretty good number two.
Interesting. That's good. And again, strong thing to be able to admit that and take ownership of that. It's life experiences will lead you that way. The 25-year-old says I want to be number one. The 60-plus-year-old says, hey, I know I'm not a number one. I'm a number two, and I am okay with that.
And it was a lesson hard learned. I mean, I ran my own show for 9 years.
Hmm.
And at some point you go, man, this ain't going the way it's supposed to.
Right, right. I appreciate you taking ownership of that as well. Wayne, is there anything that I should be asking you about? By the way, Nice Guy Community, I'll put a link in the show notes so that you have access to not only Wayne's book as we discussed earlier, but to the podcast as well. And you'll hear some great interviews with Marissa and Wayne, and also some guests that are on the show sharing their expertise, going toe to toe with them as well. Are there any questions that I'm not asking that I should be asking? So I want to get my community into action, and I don't know exactly. I mean, shit, I've only had the show for 10 years. You'd figure I would know by now how to get my audience into action. What can I tell them, or what can you tell them and share with them to help move them a little closer to you? What would be good?
Yeah, I think and there is a download. There are a couple of different assessments. There is a team assessment, which if you write to me or connect to me on LinkedIn, I will gladly send you, right? But the problem What happened during COVID was something that had never happened in a really, really long time, which is we had a moment. We actually could stop and think, right? And that's why there was so much drama when the return to office started, because people had a chance to think about it and go, do I really want to spend 90 minutes a day in the car?
Right.
We don't get a chance to stop and think. And especially as we're reorganizing our teams and we're thinking about when should we be hybrid and when should we not. And let's face it, it's easier when the boat's not in the water. If you're starting a startup, you can say, hey, maybe we should do this, right? When the boat's in the water, it's awful hard to say, well, maybe we should do something completely different, or maybe we need to be a hybrid. Stop and take stock of what's working and what's not. That is we should be doing that all the time anyway. As leaders, as team leaders, as human beings, we should be stopping periodically and saying what's working and what's not in our lives. But we don't do this. We're so busy keeping it going, right? It's like, what's the old joke? We're really lost, but we're making great time. Right.
Well, too many times people are spend their entire day, especially when ownership or upper level management spends too much time working in the business and not enough time working on the business.
Exactly.
I think it would be great if those in our community that are thinking about working remotely, or they have a company that has just turned into a remote workforce, or you have a remote workforce organization and you just need help with the evolution of that. Would that be a good potential prospect of yours?
Absolutely. I think clearly the long distance series, long distance leader, long distance teammate, long distance team, but also at the Kevin Eikenberry Group, we have training and all kinds of development tools for managers who maybe just need to tweak what they're doing. We said right at the beginning, well, a good manager can probably figure it out, but wouldn't it be nice not to be guessing? Wouldn't it be nice to know that you're doing a best practice, that other people who are good at this do it this way? And we have plenty of training and consulting around that. And clearly, we would be happy to talk to anybody in the community. But like I say, just hit me up on LinkedIn or whatever, and we can begin a conversation.
Excellent. Well, we'll put a link in the show notes for not only your LinkedIn, Facebook, also the podcast, the book, so that you guys have access to that. And if you scour through Wayne's website, you'll also get a chance to see some of those assessments. I'm sure those are located strategically on the website, so you have access to those as well. Wayne, thank you so much for sharing your message and your inspiration, your expertise with our community today. I certainly appreciate you and being on the show.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, man. And like I say, can't have enough good people in your orbit, so this is great.
I appreciate you as well, Wayne. Thanks for being here. Nice Guy community. Never underestimate the power of nice. Again, special thanks to Wayne Turmel. All of his information, including access to the book, will be right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Well, that's 20 minutes of my life I'll never get back. Oh, is it still on?